Seconds. There we go.
And we're live. So, welcome everyone. Thanks all for being here. I am back with Chris at Speaker's Corner, although clearly not at Speaker's Corner today. But thanks, Chris, for joining me. And how are things with you?
Yeah, doing really well, Lloyd. Thanks for having me back. I really do like our live sessions where we get to go through some stuff.
No, thank you. It's been great. I appreciate having the chance to speak with you about these things. I had Erica and Connie, who are on the Cross and Crescent discussion group, and she runs her own channel, Small Clips Apologetics. And I'm having them again this weekend because they do some great apologetics. Eric has some great arguments. He's retired now, so he is starting to do some research. He's spending time committed to developing his apologetics and his polemics, which is great. And he and I've had some very good conversations, and looking forward to that as well. So welcome Century Since and Nina, Mikhail, Thunderous, good evening. Thunderous, let's do something on this Sunday. So 6 p.m. your time, 7 p.m. mine. Let's do that on Sunday, Thunderous. And Romeo, Dr. Mutaman, and thanks all for being here. So Chris, you have a regular, sorry, was that?
I'll just say that, his name. I wasn't prepared for that. Got like PhD,
PhD, THD, ND, MD. So I guess he knows what he's on about. So and Century Since, welcome. So you have a discussion group, and you guys go through polemics and apologetics. You obviously do an analysis, like feedback of your experiences at Speaker's Corner, and then you discuss ways, I guess, of how to counter these. What kind of arguments to use? Can you tell me a bit about that, and for the audience, because I'm assuming that the Muslim polemics, they ebb and sway, but also they evolve.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So as part of what we do at Speaker's Corner, we find it quite beneficial to offline, away from Speaker's Corner, usually remote. Mm-hmm. We have a weekly meeting where we just analyze some of the things that we heard that week on the Sunday. Speaker's Corner happens every Sunday. And we just go through some of the, to be brash, nonsense things that the Dawa guys have been saying. And we just analyze it. We just think about what is the best response we can give, and how can we think about it polemically? How can we defend the Christian faith? And how can we ultimately turn it around and be like, hey, you guys are not following the true religion. You aren't in the truth. You are actually, if anything, acting more like a cult. And you need to turn away from that and repent of that and come back to Lord Jesus Christ. So that's kind of what we focus on. And we go through different material every week. And it's quite casual. So.
Right. Yeah, I was very happy to be invited the 1 week, the first time I was on, and it's a very, very interesting crew. You guys do some. So what has come out of this meeting? What are common patterns you see within the Dawah that Muslims are using, and are there levels of Dawah Gandists? Are they like skilled guys? Are they cannon fodder? Is there something in between?
Yeah. That's a really interesting question. So there are trolls, I guess is the best way of putting it. So, like you have a YouTube and you have the comment section, and you can see people that are just obvious trolls. They just copy paste the same thing. Well, those people actually are real in the sense that they do the same thing basically at Speaker's Corner in person. I'm going to name drop Suraj here. There is a particular Muslim Dawah Gandhist called Suraj, and he's this quite short guy who is Somalian. And his whole role is basically just to do damage cover. So if a Christian speaks to a Muslim and the Christian is explaining, hey, do you guys know that Muhammad had sex with Aisha when she was 9 years old? Or, hey, did you guys know that Allah doesn't love the non-believers? We go through some of these common points. He will literally intrude and get in front of people and yell and scream at them. And you can just watch him like running around, like going to different Christian groups and trying to disrupt them as much as he can. That's one level that you'll see. Suraj is kind of the best at it. That guy. So he's been escorted out of the park many times for violent behavior as well.
Really?
David at Speaker's Corner made that point. Yeah, he calls him tiny criminal because he's been escorted out of the park on many occasions by the police, but he still keeps coming.
No one does anything about it. Is someone that is pre-violent, or one of the terms you can use is someone who's pre-violent. They're not directly violent, but they're in those stages prior, and there's intent there.
Yeah, he's the sort of guy that will get very physical and touchy. And the more upset and emotional he gets, his arms start going in the air and he starts like using his shoulders to butt into people. That kind of thing. And then if it escalates, he'll escalate with it.
I was
So that's
talking
one
with
level.
someone. Yeah, sorry.
No, no, go on, Lloyd. No, I was just gonna. But you had the point.
No, I was talking with someone today. You know, the incident in Germany, which was very unfortunate for many reasons, but someone, Michael Sturzenberger of the AfD, was attacked. Now, of
Oh
course,
yes, I heard.
if only Christians weren't Christians, they wouldn't get killed by Muslims, right? If only we wouldn't do things on YouTube to discuss Islam from authentic Islamic sources, we wouldn't get injured and hurt and insulted and so and right. If only Salman Rushdie didn't write that book, he wouldn't have gotten stabbed in the eye.
Just need to shut
If
up
if only,
and be quiet. That's what I think
yeah,
of when
yeah.
I.
If
Yeah,
only we, if only those people at the Christmas market in Germany hadn't gone to a disgusting, evil Christmas market, they wouldn't have had that truck driven over them. If only those people hadn't gone to that concert, they wouldn't have had a bomb go off in it. So, I mean, if only we hadn't done these things. So we clearly incited these people, which is we probably have
evidently.
to grovel and apologize for that. But also with the AfD, the Muslim was stabbing people, and one of the AfD members grabbed him, managed to restrain him, got him on the ground, and stopped him from stabbing people. So the police obviously jumped in and said, "Hey, oh my God, there's that evil, nasty German white man who is suppressing a Muslim. Oh my God, let me rescue the Muslims." So he pulled the evil white man off of the Muslim stabber and started arresting him on the ground. So the Muslim got up and stabbed the policeman in the neck several times, and he has since died, which just tells you
Yeah,
the state of it just tells you the state of where we are today in the West.
it's kind of the thing where, like, part of you thinks, how foolish can you be? You see someone who's holding someone who, I mean, I don't know. I guess maybe he just made a judgment call and got it incredibly wrong. I find it difficult to see how he could have done that, but evidently so. And when I saw the knife and the knife go into his neck, because I saw that it went into his neck, and he lasted for a few seconds, I immediately thought there's a high likelihood he's going to die from that. Just from watching it, because I know the news. Well, from what I've heard of the news, supposedly he died from it. The police officer who was stabbed in
Yes,
the
yeah.
neck. Um, I remember before hearing that, when I saw the footage, I thought, yeah, because you don't, with a knife like that. I don't know. Maybe you probably know more than me, Lloyd, but I don't think if you give someone time to go at you with a knife in the neck, like, I think there's a good chance you're in some serious danger.
90% where I come from, and this is something. I mean, this is something that I work with. I would say semi-professionally. Um, one of the major, because most attackers will be right-handed and they'll be attacking the left side of your neck. That is one of the major things that you cover. And 90% of victims die from stab wounds, generally to this side of the body, largely to the neck. From they exsanguinate, they bleed out. So this is the major target that you have to protect. So
Yeah.
this is and I mean, you've got the external carotids, you've got the internal, got your jugulars and so on. It's a really bad target to hit, and you can't stitch it up, you can't heal it. You can compress, but it's a problem. It's a serious problem.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's very unfortunate. And
Yeah.
yeah, so I
So
mean, this is something we saw. They tried to stab Hartoon, and it's good grief. It's a miracle that she survived. She clearly wasn't meant to be taken from the earth that day, and I hope they catch that
absolutely.
guy.
I think she's been an instrument of the Lord for a long time, and I think on that day she in particular was. There's video of her after being the victim of a stabbing attack. The guy tried to stab her. I think he was aiming. I think maybe just at the face. I don't know if he had any, because all the footage shows he was either aiming at the face or maybe the neck, and he just missed. But
I
he
saw
missed
that he
multiple
looked.
times.
The thing is, they get into a bit of a frenzy. Look, the guy from the AfD, Michael Sturzenberger, he was stabbed in the head and face. If you look at what happened to Father Marmari, head and face, right? Same with others. That's the Quran, exactly. Quran 8:12. That's why the neck stab,
Yeah.
because it's designed to take you from this life, right? That's the whole point of attacking that particular target. So yeah, and yeah, I mean, so this is a very unfortunate. You were saying that there were multiple levels of apologists. So you get the trolls who are there to
Yes.
intimidate and threaten.
Yep. Siraj being the number one of that. Just I saw in a comment someone said the cucumber guy. Yeah, kind of. He's also one. But to be honest with you, he's actually, and I'm being honest here, I think he's not well. But he is violent, and
But
he
isn't
has
that
been
always the
violent.
case? They claim that, once they do something weird, it's like they're mentally unwell. I mean, the newspaper reports were policemen killed at far right rally, as if someone in the
Right.
far right killed him. I mean,
Yeah,
holy moly! I mean,
that's what I
that's not
hate.
an accurate headline.
Yeah, I mean that's when you know that you're coming from an ideological perspective, right? You care more about how you phrase the truth than just saying the truth, and that's when you should stop reading those kind of news headlines. To be honest, because they're just lying to you, to your face.
Yeah.
What was
Yeah.
I going to say? Oh, yeah. So the reason why I say this is, yeah, the cucumber guy. He's this old guy who I think is from like Afghanistan originally. He comes to Speaker's Corner. He's called Street Mike the M word, and that's one of his favorite words to yell out. He has been violent before, so he shouldn't be at the corner. But yeah, he's just a peculiar type. But yeah, you could say he's kind of trollish, but he usually stays to his own self. I'm just gonna go through some comments. Is that all right? Because some people have asked
Sure.
questions.
Please go ahead.
Jump in.
Yeah.
So is Hat and Tash still coming to Speaker's Corner? No. Hat and Tash, to our knowledge, is safe and well. She has started making videos on her channel again, so that's a really good sign. I think that she is just laying low for the time being, basically. And I think we haven't seen the end of her. I do think that she'll come to Speaker's Corner again. It's just going to be a little while before that happens.
I think
That's my
people don't
opinion.
realize she's had multiple attempts on her life. That wasn't the only one. She's
Yeah.
had several attempts on her life. She's had several near successful attempts.
I think I mean, I don't know for sure, but I think there's probably more that she hasn't made public. I can't prove that or anything, but it wouldn't surprise me, given what she does, that there have been
I'm
other
aware of a
occasions
few
we've
that
gone
have
viral.
occurred that haven't really been spoken about.
Yeah, I'm not going to go into anything, but yeah, I'm just aware that she lives a very hard life, I think, and she chooses to do it. And Lord willing, she has been incredibly successful at bringing Muslims out of the cult of Islam and to Lord Jesus Christ.
Well, she did strike one of the hardest blows against Islam in recent years. I mean, one of the most significant was revealing those 24 Qurans on that video with Jay Smith.
Yep, that was a huge thing. I think that was like worldwide in a sense, because it was just so phenomenal. And also the way people reacted to it, the way Muslims reacted to seeing that, they were like trying to grab them. And what people might not have seen is Jay Smith was leaving after this with the Qurans, and Muslims are trying to grab the Qurans off him and like steal them. They wanted to steal Qurans because they were like, "Hey, people can't know about this." It was so weird. It's crazy.
Actually, you know what? While we're here, there's something that I could. Hold on. Now that I'm thinking, you just made me think of this. Is this here? Jewish. You just made me think of something. I just gotta find the page where I put it now. It's here, probably here. Let me see. Found it. You just made me think of something, Chris, and something that I think is worth talking about. It's a direction I want to go. It's time. Let me just share my screen, the entire screen. Bob's, there you go. And what did I just do? Add to stage. Bob's your uncle. There you go.
You got it. Nice.
Talking about those Quranic differences. Now, I know someone who is very knowledgeable of this particular topic is Jai or Jay. He occasionally goes on Eric's channel. He's extremely knowledgeable because he speaks Arabic. And of course, Muslims are like, you can't Islam properly because you don't speak Arabic. And of course, Jay says, well, I'm a native Arab speaker. No, but you're a dirty Arab. I don't want to talk to you. Which is like, okay, I meet the criteria, but so yeah, the goalpost could move. But notice, this is one example. Quranic differences. This is Quran 10:16. I'm just going to bring this page up larger, and everyone can see that.
One of my favorite ones. Yeah.
Now this is with Eunice, which is Jonah. Now, notice this is, I know it's hard to see for the audience, my apologies. It's a little hard to see. This is a Quran version called Abdul Manan Omar. Okay. And this is 1016. Oh, God, what did I just do to myself? I made a wrong mistake. I need to fix this. There we go. And then this is a different Quran version, Aziz Ahmed. I'm assuming these are legitimate because Muslims are putting these out for the public to view, right? So these are two. So this is called the EnglishQuran.com, and you can do Quran side by side. Now they speak of the different qira'at, or just it's tomato versus tomato, but it's still tomato, Tomato, except no, when you see potato versus tomato, those are not the same thing. Or when you see rabbit and tomato, those are not dialectical differences. Those are different things entirely. But notice in this Quran, 10:16, say, had Allah so willed that he should replace the teachings of the Quran with some other teachings, I would not have recited this Quran to you, nor would he have made it known to you. Okay? Let's go to verse 16 in this Quran. But when our evident signs or revelations are recited to them, those who expect not the meeting with us say, bring a lecture, the Quran, other than this, or change it. It is not for me to change it of my own accord. That's exactly the same verse, right? Chris, 10:16 and 10:16. Am I correct?
Whoa, that's totally different. Totally different.
Yes. Isn't that unusual?
And that's because there we go. Yeah, it's a Bismillah. That's what you go on. I'm jumping ahead.
Go on. No, please go on. Wow, thank you very much, Reza. Very grateful. And look, for those who donate to the channel, many of you just do so without leaving any comments, and I'm very grateful and thank you for that. It's very, very much appreciated. And by the way, Chris is linked in the description box and in the title, so please visit his channel. Thank you very much, Reza. Yeah, you were saying? Please, Chris, tell us more.
So I've seen this before. Now, it's actually really common with Ahmadiyya Muslims because their Quran does include the Bismillah in all of the chapters, as far as I'm aware. So it basically, it knocks the verse order by one. And I think that might be what has happened here, because you can see quite clearly on the left-hand side, verse 16 says, say, had Allah so willed. But on the other, on the one on the right, it's 17, say, had Allah willed.
Right. So that's exactly the problem. Now, they cannot come to a consensus as to whether the Bismillah is included or not, because the Quran is unchanged, word for word, dot for dot, comma for comma, and letter for letter. Right. And then on top of this, there are other versions of the Quran. So it says here in 10:16, okay, had Allah so willed, okay, nor would he have made it known to you, right? So notice, it says here, had Allah willed, I would not have recited it to you. Had Allah willed, right? He would replace. Hold on. Had Allah willed, I would not have recited it to you, nor would he have made it known to you. Had Allah so willed, he should replace the teachings. I should not have recited this Quran to you. Now, not in this version, nor would he have made it known to you. In other versions of the Quran, 10:16 has a not. He would not have made it known to you. And in other versions, it says he would have made it known to you. They actually contradict each other with the not. So there's a negation. So now you have a contradiction in the Quran, because some versions have a not. I would not have done it. And others says I would have done it. Is that a contradiction?
Really cool thing for that. Oh, yeah. I think it is. Yeah, like it's negation, right? It's like the biggest form of contradiction. If I say my name is Chris, and then I say in the same context, my name is not Chris, that is literally that is the biggest and clearest case of contradiction you could possibly have. I'm telling you one thing, and then in the same context, I'm actually negating what I just said.
Yep.
It's a direct contradiction.
So I'll bring up some of those examples the next time I do a talk on the Quranic differences. So now you've actually literally got contradictions, and Jay actually has a bunch of them. I've got a few of them, but I hope to do some more talks on that, and then just highlight some of these critical differences that are clearly where the Qurans are contradictory across different translations and versions. So yeah, you were going to bring up something?
Yeah, well, I want to bring up, I'm just going to, if I can do it super quick.
Go ahead.
Which hopefully I can. Just 1 second. What am I looking at? This one. Can I share my screen if that's cool?
Pretty sure. Yeah, go for it. I should catch it.
Okay. So it's the same thing, but it's just a little bit more clear. And I want people to know that. Oh, don't want to play.
There it is.
Yeah. I like how it's paused for me just with my hands in the air.
Oh, Father Suleiman, he's very good. He's got the Bridges Quran, right?
Yeah, so this guy is a guy who works for a Dawah Institute in Cairo, in Egypt, called the Bridges Foundation. So he he owns his own institute that does Dawah worldwide. He does a lot of stuff in America where he tries to convince Americans that Muslims from the East that follow Islam do not in any sense pose a threat. That's one of his main mission goals. But he also happens to be someone who has studied the Qur'at, the different readings of the Quran, or as you should probably think of it, just different Qurans, because they're different.
Right. They call them readings. They're actually variants. They're different Qurans. Yes.
Exactly that. They're variants. And when you have different variants, and they're all supposedly Quran,
perfectly preserved.
Qurans, right? Yeah, perfectly preserved. Let's see if you guys can find this. What's really cool is this is actually his material that we're going through. It's not mine. I didn't put this together. He did. And this is the same verse, Surah Yunus, Surah 10, Ayah 16, that Lloyd, you just brought up. But what's cool is that he's got them side by side and he actually shows the Arabic. And you can actually look and see exactly where the Arabic differs. It's right at the end with the short vowel at the top of the last word. Remember that Arabic goes from right to left. So you need to look at the very left word of that red, the red highlighted part. If you look above it, you can see there's like, I think it's like a lion and then a little squiggly circle thing instead on one of them. And that's all the difference. And that simple difference produces a negation. So on the top one, you have, had Allah willed, I would have not read it to you, and he would have informed you about it. And then again, had Allah willed, I would not have read it to you, and he would have informed you about it. The through someone else bit is not actually in the Arabic. Fidel actually added that because he felt the need to clarify the Quran, because the Quran is not perfectly clear. But yeah, like it's things like these, and there are a ton of these as well. We went through some others. We could look at some of those, but yeah,
right.
it's, this is the kind of thing that you're dealing with, guys. When they say the killer is just dialects, no, it isn't. It changes context. It changes who's speaking. It changes whether something is or something isn't. It changes like historical accounts, like whether or not someone did something or they didn't do something. And that's quite substantial if you're claiming your text has been perfectly preserved.
Yeah. In fact, there's the one example which I showed last time, where it says that you should feed a poor person or you should feed poor people. Now, in terms of theology and practice, if it's one person, great. But what if it's poor people? Then which one of those is the correct theology? Because if you have to feed many people to get blessings, and you only feed one, then you actually are remiss in your duties. You haven't met your requirements. Whereas if you feed multiples, then you're good to go. Allah will accept that. But if you violate the religion, then Allah does not accept that. So is it one or is it many? Is it one poor person or many poor people? We don't know. By the way, I've added the Bridges Quran to I've dropped it in the chat now 3 times. So have a look. That's a download link.
I have a really cool thing I can do. Wait. It's going to be super cool here. If we show this, and if actually no, I don't know. I guess some people they're going to be on their phones, right? So they won't have access to a QR code that they can scan.
I'll put it. I was going to show it anyway, so that at least later on they can come back to it. And let's add it to the stage. So
yeah, so this is a QR code to the Bridges translation of the 10 Qur'an of the Noble Quran, which is the book we're referring to, which is just a Quran translation where wherever there are variants or the Qur'an, they highlight it in red, and then in the footnotes they'll explain what the differences are and what different Qur'an say instead.
Right.
And you guys probably on a phone, but oh well.
Yeah, I've also dropped the link in the chat. So guys, I've dropped it in the link in the chat multiple times. It's on my Google archive. You can get it there. Let me also show this. Actually, let me fix this. I need to animate this one, fade. And Bob is now my uncle. So let me double check. Z5. Okay, yeah.
Very British phrase. Bob is not your uncle.
Well, I come from South Africa, right? We're a former British colony. Because personally, I fully disagree that Bob is now my aunt. You know? So guys, there's a link here to Samuel Green. You can easily find this online. Samuel Green, different Arabic versions of the Quran, PDF, right? You can find this. And he writes here, in this edition of the Quran, Muhammad Fad Karum has collected accepted variant readings from among the 10 accepted readers. Or is it the 14? Or is it the 25? Or is it the That's the question we haven't settled yet. And included them in the margin of the 1924 Egyptian Standard Edition of the Hafs. Right? These are not all the variants. There are other variants that could have been included, but the author has limited himself to the variants of the 10 accepted readers. As the title of his book suggests, this makes it easy to know what the variant readings are because they are clearly listed. So he lists them here in the margin. Below is a page from this reference Quran. You can see the variant readings listed in the margin. Approximately 2/3 of the verses of the Quran have some type of accepted variant. 2/3. This is approximately 4,000 accepted variants.
Interesting.
That's within the known Qira'at, right? So they're listing all the variants here, and let's have a quick look at the next slide. Below is a 6-volume encyclopedia set which records all known variants. It is entitled Mujam al-Qira'at al-Qaraniya Maqadima fi Qira'at wa al-Ashar al-Qura, the encyclopedia of the Quranic readings with an introduction to readings and famous readers. So this is an encyclopedia set in Islam, in Arabic, which lists all the known variants from all the Qira'at because they don't exist.
Hey, you know what's a good way of looking at this? This is basically just an Islamic scholar writing about all the different Quran variants, and that's what it looks like. It's a 6-volume set explaining all the Quran variants. You know what I mean? Like,
this is not.
You could just phrase it as
the same. So,
yeah, you could just frame it as, hey, there was this Islamic scholar guy who wrote about all the Quran variants, and it's this 6-volume. It's this image.
yeah. I mean, so guys, screen cap, by all means, knock yourselves out, please. Yeah, so this is a 6-volume set. So look up Samuel Green, the different Arabic versions of the Quran. And just Samuel Green, just look that up and show people this, right? Also, what few people realize is when the Quran was, when Al-Azhar wrote their version of the Quran, which took 17 years, as we mentioned before, they didn't consult a single old manuscript, not one. They consulted tradition, they consulted the Hafs, but as we highlighted, as people may not be aware, I covered this previously, but there are multiple versions of Hafs. There are multiple versions of Hafs, and there is still debate as to which version of Hafs is the correct one. There are 4 versions of Hafs that are known. 4 versions. Which of the Hafs versions is the correct one? So Al-Azhar just said, well, bugger that, we'll just pick this one. And there you go. That's your Quran today. They consulted no old Qurans. They didn't have some guy reciting it while they wrote it down. What does that tell us?
Tells us that the way they do this is sketchy as hell. And it doesn't rely on a scientific method. It doesn't rely on looking at manuscripts. It's like it's this dependency on a tradition of orality, really, I guess, rather than written texts. But they don't even get the orality right. How can you have 4 different ways that someone supposedly said something? How does that make sense? So they want you to believe that Hafs and Asim was basically he had his own recitation, but then for fun he varied it up a bit and he gave it in 4 different ways. Why? That's just incredibly confusing. I don't believe that for a second.
Yeah, and Zacchaeus says, Alhamdulillah, all ham to Allah. Lloyd, ready to take the Shah Na Na. When will I get my 72-year-old virgin? The Shah Na Na. Good night, sweetheart. Yeah, it's time to go home. So yeah, so better take your Shah Na Na with Bowser, okay? Because that's the only way to do this. I don't know if you guys remember the Shah. Oh man, Shah Na Na. That was back in the 70s, if I recall. I'm showing my age. Oh my golly. Oh boy. Yeah, so 6-volume set. So that's a little bit of a problem there for these guys. Also, here's the thing, with apologetics, they're always like, well, I'm going to consult a scholar. Why aren't the scholars in the park?
Yeah, there's some interesting stuff there. There isn't anyone. Well, there are sheikhs. There are sheikhs at Speaker's Corner that are supposed to be men of knowledge, but when you question them, it falls apart very, very, very quickly. They're not really knowledgeable. They might know things like the differences between the Maliki school and the Hanbali school regarding certain issues. But when you talk about things that actually matter, then they don't know anything, because they have to go along with the theological party line. The Quran is perfectly preserved. Okay, we can't prove that. In fact, all the evidence says it isn't. But we have to keep telling Muslims this because we've been saying it for decades now. So
Right.
if anyone asks you about it, just obfuscate, make something up, or walk away. And that's what the sheikhs. There's a Sheikh Muhammad who's quite a frequent guy, and he wears all the attire. He runs away from everyone now. There's another sheikh that seems a bit more involved, but he doesn't seem to know anything. He spent most of his time a few weeks ago talking with David about why. I think he tried to justify, in his view, why it's acceptable for his own daughter to marry a man if she was only 9 years old. You know, these kind of things. It's quite laughable, really, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah. Is there anything we should show anyone quickly out of the Bridges Quran?
Yep. If you bring up what I'm showing now, wait, let me let's make it bigger.
Yeah. I'll drop the link in the chat again just so everyone can get a copy of the Bridges. Yeah, I'll do that now.
Cool. So this is something I'm actually putting together to do a presentation on, so you guys get, you know, an early look at it. But here are some of the ones that I think are some of the most profound. Now, I haven't gone through everything. There's still room for others, and there are others that I'm perfectly aware of, but I've just included ones that I think are substantial. And we can go through them on the app, the PDF file you've got of the British translation if you want, but it's just something that you guys can take and you can look at in your own time and understand, wow, actually, yeah, there are differences. And now with that British translation, you can show people it. You can say, look, it comes from a guy called Fidel Suleiman, who was a Dawa guy. You know, this is a Muslim that we're quoting here who has done this.
So what's his angle then? What's his angle? Why is he revealing these mismatches?
I don't really know. I mean, he agrees that it's a problem. When I spoke to him, he said, yes, Chris, it is a problem that most Muslims think there is only one reading of the Quran, as he would put it. He thinks that really it should be known that there's actually 10. And in his view, the Quran just, like, it makes everything more beautiful and more profound because it just gives ways in which you can understand and read the Quran that don't contradict and they don't say something different, at least not in a way that's problematic. He would just say, you can take all these different things and you can just merge them together. You can just remember the Surah 10, Ayah 16 we showed earlier, where it said how Allah would inform them or he wouldn't inform them in a different Quran. Yeah. Well, in his view, you can just merge them and say both. I don't think you can. I think that is basically accepting that you have contradictions, and your way of dealing with it is just doubling down and saying, yeah, it's all good. But yeah,
I mean, look at this. This is a random page in the Bridges, Quran 7:113. Is there a reward for us if we are overcomers? Surely there is a reward for us. The one is a question, the other is a statement.
Yeah, this is quite common as well.
Surely there is. Is there? The one voices doubt, the other one voices certainty. And that's for changing one letter.
Exactly that. If you look at the Arabic, it's incredibly minor. You don't need to know Arabic just to look at them side by side and say, oh, all that's different is this tiny little mark at the end or in the middle. And that changes quite profound what the actual meaning of the sentence is.
Let me see if I can find another example. I haven't gone through this, to be honest. I haven't really spent any time on this.
Well, I can give you some that you want to go to some.
You do that.
17:102. I think that's a powerful one. 17:102. When you go through the PDF file, look, it should say the name of the surah and a number when you go through it.
Yeah, I see it. 15. I'm just looking it up because it's
so go to 17.
Really tiny text on some of it. 102, right? 17.
So yeah, 17 and then verse 102.
Yeah, let me bring that up here.
Okay, so
you have emotionally known.
Just one thing. The English that he has written this Quran in is based off the Hafs reading. So what you're reading here is the Hafs Qur'an, the Hafs Quran. So he said, you have most surely known that none sent these down except the Lord of the heavens and the earth. Now, if you scroll down to the bottom of the page.
Yeah, so he'll have a letter, he'll have a letter reference. You see, you've got SG and you've got B here. So for the audience, just make a note of these letters that you will see with the red text, because the red text is your indicator, and then you go down here, you'll have B.
Yeah. So Al-Qasai read it as, he said, I have most surely known. Now let's go back up. So remember, I have most surely known is one Quran, what one Quran says. He said, you have most surely known. Well, hang on a second. Who's speaking? So in the context here, it's a conversation between Moses and Pharaoh. So who's he talking to, Moses or Pharaoh? Because I and you are radically different. If I said I have eaten a cake and I said you have eaten a cake, I'm referring to two different people. It can't also be me, right? If I said you are watching this video, it's very different than if I said I am watching this video.
No, yeah, you stole the money. I stole the money. That's
Radically
a completely
different.
Yeah, those are radically different things.
And these because they're called like indexical changes, they're everywhere. Like there's quite a lot of cases where you have these. And Muslim scholars have to argue who's speaking here. And they have to say, well, when the Quran is telling you what happened historically, because remember, this is quoting someone. The Quran is quoting what either Moses or Pharaoh said. But who said it? Who's being addressed? Well,
yeah, also just slightly off topic. Sorry about that. Because man, I get, when I'm talking with people, I suddenly get these little insights and associations. So Al-Qasai, notice it was the writer Al-Qasai who said, right, in his version of the Quran. Now, Al-Qasai is a very early heresy. Al-Qasai is one of the very earliest, most well organized anti-Christian heresies. So the story of a book revealed or sent down from heaven by a massive angel. Now, when you read the hadiths, right, Aisha tells of a very large angel, Jibril, and she says that when Jibril first appeared to Muhammad, Jibril was so large that his shoulders covered the sky. He covered the horizon, right? And in the story of Al-Qasai, a massive angel who covered the sky, who was miles tall and miles wide, right, gave a book. He sent down a book to Al-Qasai, right? It's spelled differently depending on who you find. And the story is taken from Parthia, northern Iran, which is close to Iraq, right? And Hadith writers borrowed local myths. So the book of Al-Qasai, Al-Qasaios, Al-Qasai, Al-Qasaios, Al-Zai, Al-Qasites, Al-Qasites, it's a lost prophetic text. It's a Jewish apocalypse from Babylonia from about it's about the early second century, end of the first century, beginning of the second century, written during the reign of Emperor Trajan. That contains law and apocalyptic prophecies pertaining to messianic, Jewish, pagan, and Gnostic doctrines. It is known from early Christian writings, and they mention it only in the context of heresies, and they promised remission of sins to all those who listened to the readings of the book and believed in it. And Epiphanius explains the origin of the name Al-Qasai to be Aramaic, Hayil Kasai, meaning the hidden power or the hidden imam.
Interesting. Wow, I have not heard of that before. That is.
It goes much deeper than I've just explained. It's really involved. This parallels Islam crazily.
Yeah, I can see the parallels immediately. It's that is interesting. That's something for me to dig into.
Wow, thank you. I wish I knew how to pronounce that name. We know more about Islam than Allah. Thank you very much. I'm very grateful, very deeply grateful. Thank you. Yeah. So yeah, I will come back to this. I've done this before, and I'm busy collecting notes on this. I've been working on this for a couple of years because it's very detailed, very complex, trying to put it all together. But this heresy just sounds like Islam from the late first, early second century. It's extremely unusual. And also notice they rejected the Apostle Paul entirely. Their book had come down from heaven. It was sent down. Their book was sent down. And notice, outward denial of one's faith is permitted, provided that one only denies with the lips and not in one's heart. Does any of this sound familiar, Chris?
Yeah, it really, really does. That is interesting.
See? Quran 16:106, one who is forced to renounce his religion while his heart is secure in faith.
It made selective use of the Old Testament and the Gospels. So that's
Yes.
interesting. So it did affirm the validity of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John because it made selective use of them. The reason I'm asking is because Muslims basically try and look for the original Islam, like because they believe that you had Isa, the prophet Isa, who is our version of Jesus, but nowhere near as good.
Yeah.
They basically say, well, from him, some variant of Islam survived, like in some minority group, and then this is what they're referring to when the Quran tells the Christians to read the Injil and to read the Torah. It's the original ones. But I'm just thinking, well, if this group still affirmed the Gospels in some sense, even very selectively, then it cannot be, because the book that came down from heaven is a totally separate book. But yeah, it's just interesting, interesting
It's
stuff.
really, but I mean, look, if people are in error, the error will just compound. But the parallels are amazing in this particular history. It's so unknown. This is one of the very, very rarely known, little known historical heretical sects, but they had a very well developed theology and they were a threat. In fact, the question was here if Lloyd and Chris, did the Book of Al-Chasai also include the Gospel of the Ebionites? The answer to that is no, I believe. However, they did influence multiple different groups. So notice here, the Ebionites are the Nazareans equal the Alchacites. One of these fragments contains a cryptogram which, reading outwards from the middle word and inverting the order of the letters, produces an Aramaic formula, right? Which presupposes readers who understood Aramaic. So it is probable that the book in its original form was written in Aramaic, right? It is not possible to decide whether Al-Chasai was his own name or a nickname. It was disseminated amongst other religious groups, Jewish and Jewish Christian, the Jewish Nazareans. Now, this is something that is, these Nazareans are a heretical Christian messianic, Jewish messianic sect, but they're heretical. So they are sort of Jewish messianic Jews, but heretical, right? And notice Judeo-Christian Ebionites. So they didn't include that, but it was their book. They were supposedly. And for this, Epiphanius once again affords evidence, right, in heresies. And the influence of the Alchacites upon Mani, as we now know from the Cologne Mani Codex, must have been considerable. Down to his 24th year, Mani lived in an Alchacite community, and his independent teaching developed in controversy with this Baptist group. So they influenced the Manichaeans. The Manichaeans definitely influenced Muhammad.
Yeah.
Hopefully that answers the question. There's a lot here, Chris. There's a heck of a lot in this history. If you'd like, maybe we can do this one day. I mean, this is the closest parallel I've come to Islam, and few people know this history.
Yeah, it's interesting because Muslims try and abuse these kind of groups. They'll be like, oh, maybe the Quran isn't referring to Trinitarian Christians. The Quran is referring to Ebionites or Manichaeans or some other group, and they'll try and give different possible solutions. But to my understanding, anyway, it can't be the Ebionites as they understand it, because the Ebionites denied the virgin birth, for example. So I think that, which to me just kind of proves the point that Muhammad got confused and he heard stories from other groups like the Ebionites, or maybe like some descendant after them, and he incorporated it into the Quran without knowing what he's actually incorporating. That'd be my guess, anyway.
Yeah, no, clearly he didn't know. Clearly he was getting some sort of oral transmission, and he was not aware of the fact. Because you look in the 9th century when these Muslims eventually settled in Spain, they actually started reading the Bible, and that's when you find that the polemics against St. Paul really pick up pace, and that's when you find that the story changes in Islam, because they've actually now come across a full Bible, read it, and realized that they've been talking absolute nonsense about the Bible for centuries, right? And so I've covered that in my polemics series, where you see the narrative changes in the 10th century, because suddenly they come across an actual Bible and realize, oops, we made a mistake. And that's when the tahrif claims come in. And which started earlier, but the whole tahrif, the Bible's misinterpreted, the Bible's corrupted, those claims really pick up steam then.
Yeah.
We were going to do some stuff on, gosh, let me just find it again. Yep. Those books that I sent you, your thoughts on those DDAT books, let me just bring them up.
Yeah, sure thing. Ahmed Deedat is interesting. He's an interesting character. I haven't had time to go through most of his stuff, to be honest. What I do hear, though, is I sort of hear it secondhand, regurgitated in either the same form or slightly different form, depending on what the Muslim Dawah teams have kind of done to adapt to things. But Lloyd, can you scroll down a bit, because I find the introduction on this thing hilarious.
So please go.
Right,
Yeah,
wait,
so
wait,
where
no.
we want to go. Yeah.
Go to the top. It's just the second half of the top image.
Oh,
there you go. So Bible thumpers, Christians like the Jehovah's Witnesses who harass Muslims in their own homes. You see, this is kind of like a massive self-own. If you're going to put out material that critiques groups, at least understand what the group is.
Right.
That would be like me, like saying, gosh, I'm so sick of those Christian Mormons. I'm so sick of those Christian Unitarians and the Christian Arians in the Christian,
Have you listened to a guy called Paul Williams?
Oh,
he says exactly the same things. He says, Christians like the Jehovah's Witnesses and the Mormons, you're like,
you see, he knows better. That's the thing. So he does it intentionally. Very much a charlatan. Paul Williams.
Yeah, no, exactly. So, I mean, he's a liar. He won't face anyone. I've invited him multiple times. I've tagged him on Twitter. I've tagged him on YouTube. I've left comments ad nauseum to say, hey, look, Paul, let's have a conversation. Let's talk about this Sharia that you claim to know that,
I to be honest with you, the way I frame it now is that I think many people who are Dawagandists, Muslim missionaries, to use their somewhat terminology, I would say, yeah, they are predators because they prey on those who are weak and vulnerable. They only go for people who are new in the faith and for people who have never been to Speaker's Corner before, and then visitors, and they get cameras and they record it and they edit it post the fact to make them look bad. It's, to be honest with you, it's quite, it's quite disturbing and horrible that they do that.
Yeah. Should we go through these different, just show people these, hold on, I need to also find version 2. Let me just get this version 2 thing. Somehow I closed it accidentally. There we go. Bring that up. Can we go through? Oh, it's put them in different PDFs. Okay, that's why. Let me see if I can. There we go. That's mo better already. Shall we quickly go through some of these just to show people some of these Ahmad Deedat issues? What did you take from this? I know you had a brief look at it, so we didn't really have the in-depth dive. But I thought just to familiarize people with the quality of, or the lack thereof, in terms of these polemics that are still sometimes present today. But also, if these were true then and they're not true now, then Muslims have to admit they've been lying. If they suddenly have switched polemics and this is no longer true, then Ahmad Deedat must then be shown to be a liar.
But then you have to remember the first rule of doing dawah, which is never admit that you're wrong about something, ever. You'll never see them admit that. They always have, like, it's very important for them how they are perceived. They have to be perceived as being powerful, as being knowledgeable, as being wise, as being intelligent. It's all an image thing for them. And this is why when you talk to them, they just don't shut up. They just keep going on because they know what they're saying isn't good, if not just flat out wrong. But they feel as if they say it enough and with enough words and they keep going on, then you'll believe it. And that's the point. Very disingenuous.
Fair enough. Yeah. So Paul, full of cunning and guile. Okay, that's great. Sons of God. God has them by the tons in the Bible. Okay, thanks, Ahmed. Let's have a quick look at, for example, incest. Wow. So he brings this up as one of the very first things he wants to discuss.
So
now,
I can.
Go on.
I was just going to say, I can kind of categorize these because you can put them into categories very easy and just kind of aggregate them all. So what you could say for this is Bible contains embarrassing thing about prophets. That's basically what that comes under. And it's very simple to refute. It's them trying to make Christians feel embarrassed by being like, look, here's a bad thing that your Bible talks about. Therefore, your Bible is somehow endorsing it, or it's not possibly true because it's describing a prophet as doing something like having sex with someone who he's related to, and a prophet would never do that. So let's focus on that last bit first. We as Christians don't believe that prophets are sinless. We believe that only God is sinless, and Christ is God in flesh, and hence he is the only one who is sinless. So for us, it's not an issue when we hear the Bible portraying people as they really are. As the old Oliver Cromwell quote, show me warts and all, show me things as they really are, as human beings who, though they are prophets sent by God, they are still fallible. They can still make mistakes. Bad things can still happen to them. But Muslims, because of their doctrine, and they have the doctrine of Isma, which basically means that all the prophets in Islam are sinless, which, as you can imagine, is really bizarre, given that the Quran in multiple places says that actually, no, they sin all the time. The Quran tells you that Noah sinned, Abraham sinned, Muhammad sinned, Moses sinned. It tells you everyone sins, but they have a doctrine that says no one sinned.
Which is crazy. And also the Quran is prescriptive. It is law. Whereas for Christianity, in Christianity, the Bible is not a book of law, as in it's not civil law. It's moral law, but it is not prescriptive. It is descriptive. It is history. It is poetry. It is narrative stories. It is a variety of genres. Whereas the Quran is supposedly the speech of Allah. And therefore it is prescriptive upon Muslims. These are completely different genres of book. So this is religion of law versus religion which does not prescribe civil law. Prescribes a moral law. So
Muslims will look at things like Numbers 31:18, 1 Samuel 15:3, and they will basically say, hey, this is the Bible telling you to go out and kill people. It's like, no, it's not prescriptive, it's descriptive. And you have to then explain, just as Lloyd has just done, the difference between the two, because Muslims, they aren't ever told the truth or encouraged to question things. They're just given a script and they just have to recite it, which is really sad.
Yep. So this is scripted for the audience. Then have a look here. I'll show you a couple of things. He speaks of this. So again, for those who've seen this before, you'll know this. For those who haven't, everything is in the description box. You can download all of these references. It's in the description box, or I put it in the chat. It is available in the archive, my Google archive. Just look for it, download it. So for instance, the combat kit. Notice Muslims are going to war here. Combat kit by Ahmad Didat. Right?
Called it the jihad kit. They missed a trick though.
So I'm going to excuse my French here, but so he speaks of here, chapter 3, absurdities in the book of God and the Holy Bible. Absurdities, right? He speaks here of, I guess you guys can all read, so I don't have to explain this to you, right? Now, notice he says here, to eat S and drink P. 2 Kings 18:27 and Isaiah 36:12. Chris, does he anywhere explain the context? Does he say anything, or is this literally the entirety of the entry? Is this an index entry, or is this the actual content?
This is them giving no context at all. In fact, I'm convinced that Ahmad Didat has never read the Bible. He's basically gone through, perhaps with the aid of a computer or something, and just typed in certain words. A bit like how you Control F, and he just types in the word incest, or he types in certain words, and then he just finds a quote, and then he just quote mines, which is very disingenuous. No context will be here. And again, to be honest with you, I tripped up immediately over the title. If you scroll up slightly, where we see the title of these lists that he's listing, it says absurdities in the book. Okay, so first of all, if you think that a miracle is absurd, I don't know what you're doing in Islam. I think that's a really weird thing to believe. If you think that God cannot in some way bring about a miracle, something that cannot occur naturally but is supernatural in origin, as theists we believe that, and you think that that's absurd, then you've just destroyed Islam. But again, you'll tend to, and this is kind of I mean this somewhat tongue in cheek. You'll tend to find that the way that the Dawagandists argue is they argue very much like in a suicide bomber kind of way. They would rather destroy their entire religion if they can get a point across against Christianity. They would put Muhammad and they would deny all the scholars. They'll deny each other. Like the amount of times I've said, look, people at Speaker's Corner, Muhammad Ijab, Mansour, they've talked about perfect preservation of the Quran. Are you going to tell me they're now wrong? And they will go, yep, bye-bye Mansour, bye-bye, yep, throw them under the bus, they're all wrong. Throw the Quran under the bus, throw the Sunnah under the bus, throw the tafsirs under the bus. My weird liberal interpretation of Islam is correct. And they do it often because That's basically how to be a Muslim in the West. You just throw everything under the bus.
This reminds me of Javad Hashmi, who lies through his teeth about Christianity and then makes up his own personal, private, friendly, fuzzy, warm, happy version of Islam. Like, we should care about what he thinks of Islam. In my version of Islam, there is no child marriage because that's all false and I don't believe it. And like, okay, it's like, great. So some people don't believe in gravity. Does that make them, there are scientists who believe the earth is flat. Does that make their opinion particularly valid? No offense to the flat earthers out there. So,
yeah,
but yeah, I mean,
exactly.
But this is it. This is what Ahmadiyya was teaching back in the day. He gives literally no context, and he just says this is what the Bible teaches. He doesn't state, for instance.
You finish your point, and then I'll add something.
He doesn't state that, for instance, this was a war where the Jews were encircled in a city that were besieged for months, and the enemy, the king that had sent his general to force them to kill them or force them to surrender, had told them, "I'm going to starve you to death. You will have nothing to eat but your own," he's insulting them, "but your own pee and your own poo." Right? This is not about God saying, "Hey guys, this stuff tastes great." So, but this is what he's implying. It's a history lesson. It's a discussion. It's a description of a situation of desperation where the enemy was insulting them. How is this God's? I mean, this is a twisting and corruption of God's word. This is not even remotely honest by Ahmadiyya. He was a liar through and through.
Absolutely, yeah. The only way you can believe that they come up with this is they were blind as they wrote it. It's either that or they're lying, and I think they're lying. So another point as well is you can play the same game with the Quran. Like, if you believe the Quran doesn't contain anything that perhaps someone would think is absurd or immoral or weird or anything like that, I know, of course, there are tons of things. Surah 65, ayah 4 literally says that it's permissible for you to divorce a prepubescent child. That's what it says. Like, to me, I think that's more than absurd. I think that's immoral. Surah 33 is the most bizarre thing you'll read. I think it's in Surah 33 and perhaps Surah 53, where it talks about how Muhammad, as revelation, got the command to tell people to leave his house because they were spending too much time there talking to him, and not to speak to his wives behind a curtain. I mean, this is the chapter. Surah 111 is hilarious. Surah 111. Okay, can I bring this up? Because
sure, go ahead.
I don't want to go too much of a tangent, but this is just my favorite thing. For just
I go on tangents all the time, so go ahead.
If you really want to say, "Hey, it contains absurd things, therefore it must be wrong," then please explain to me what on earth this is doing in your Quran, and just explain what on earth this is. Okay, do you see this? You want to bring this up? If you click on that.
Sure. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, this is Surah 111. All right, let's just read what this is about. It's very quick. It's only a few verses long. This is how it starts, right? So no prior context, nothing. May the hands of Abu Lahab. Who's Abu Lahab? No idea. Be ruined, and ruined is he. Okay, so that guy's a bad guy. Okay, fine. His wealth will not avail him, or that of which he gained. Okay, so his wealth won't help him. Okay, fine. He will enter to burn in a fire of blazing flame. Okay, he's going to burn. Okay. And his wife as well, the carrier of firewood. Okay, so Abu Lahab and his wife are going to be burning, and his wife is the carrier of firewood. Okay. Around her neck is a rope of twisted fiber. Okay, that's nice. That's the end. It never explains to you what that's about. It never does anything with that at all. It's basically just a chapter in the Quran that may as well be titled "Screw Abu Lahab," because that's all it is. It's just condemning this random guy and his wife to hellfire for something that is not explained. That's the epitome of bizarre. There are tons of things in the Quran that are never explained, never given context to, and when you read it, you think, what on earth is that doing in a book that is supposedly revelation by Allah? Why does Allah care that Abu Lahab, we need to know, right, that Abu Lahab is in hell and so is his wife. We need to know that. Great. Thank you.
Because Allah works in mysterious ways, Chris.
Wow, Abu Lahab is mysterious as well. I have no idea who this guy is.
That's exactly the point. It's like For instance, when you ask Muslims, which is the original tablet that's in Allah, in paradise with Allah, they'll go like, no, we don't have access to that tablet. I thought it's the same thing as down here on earth. I thought it's the same one. Apparently not. So let me just bring this. So they speak here of the word bastard occurs in the Bible 3 times. Okay, great.
I read this as well. This made me laugh. Have you ever heard of
like,
let me just check this, but have you ever heard of a bastard tool? There is a tool that I used growing up called a bastard tool. You use it in metalworking or so on. But the point is that there are perfectly valid uses of the word bastard. We understand it as a swear term, you're insulting someone. But there's nothing implicitly bad with that word. It just depends on the context.
This is someone who had sex with someone out of wedlock and had a child.
Yeah,
right?
That's what you're describing. It has negative connotations because we used to hold that was a negative thing.
Yeah. So also Solomon had 4,000 stalls of horses or 40,000. Solomon had 2,000 baths or 3,000 baths. That really affects whether or not Jesus is the Son of God, I guess.
Exactly. But none of these affect the message of Scripture or any of our primary doctrines in any way. And this is why...
Here they've got a contradiction. When we can bring up the very same thing in the Quran, this disqualifies the Bible, but the Quran is just okay when it has exactly the same problem.
Yeah, I think that this is... To be honest, when I see this kind of thing, I think it's very immature and childish.
Yeah.
So Muslims are aware that there are difficulties at the very least in their Quran, and they add context later on in time to solve that problem. Like Abu Lahab, right? Who's that? Okay, that's a bit of a weird thing. That's kind of a little bit difficult. Oh, well, we can explain that later on. The hadith comes in and they give context to it. But there are other things as well where it talks about, hey, you can, for example, you're told in the Quran that it's not permitted for Muslims to marry polytheists. Muslims cannot marry polytheists. It's quite clear.
Mm-hmm.
People of the book, which includes Christians, are told to stop worshipping 3 gods. Now, it gets the 3 gods wrong. Allah, Isa, and Maryam, and they're 3 separate gods. That's not what Christians have believed or ever have believed, ever. So that's wrong. Right. But anyway, ignoring that, it says that Christians are polytheists because we believe in the Trinity. Another verse says, and I believe it's Surah 5, Ayah 4 or Ayah 5, says that actually you can marry Christians. So it's like, wait, hang on. You just said you can't marry polytheists. Christians who believe in the Trinity are polytheists. You can marry Christians. How does that work? To me, it doesn't work.
It's very confusing. I raised the point with Eric. It does feel like projection. Sorry, the stuff does feel like projection. I raised the point with Eric that I got elsewhere. But in the Quran, it states that Allah is like nothing in creation. Nothing in creation can be compared to him. He cannot be described in terms of anything in creation. So Allah is one. Now, when you ask a Muslim, are you one thing or are you like 50 things? No, he's one thing. He's like Allah. He's one thing. You are one person. I am one person. That's one chicken over there, right? So therefore, Allah is exactly like his creation and you are exactly like Allah. But I thought Allah is totally unlike. Whereas the Trinity is bad, the Trinity is wrong, but the Trinity is completely unlike anything in creation.
Exactly. That is a very good point. And I like that point. And we bring that up at Speaker's Corner. They don't really have any objection to it. What's great as well is they will say, because when you unfold their logic, what they're thinking is this: God is one, the quote the Shema, and then they'll say, Father is God, the Son is God, and the Spirit is God. These are 3 persons, therefore there must be 3 gods. But what they've accidentally done there is they've implied, because in creation every person is a separate being, therefore that logic must also apply to God, because he must be like the same law of creation. In other words, they're saying God is just like his creation. That's the irony of it. But then when they talk about their religion, Surah 42, Ayah 11 says that Allah is not like anything in his creation, which is funny because in that same verse, it describes him as being the one who's like all seeing and all hearing, which they take in a literal way. So they believe he does actually see and he does actually hear, but he's not like anything in creation.
Yeah, no. Yeah, we know, but there's more and more evidence that the Quran is very much derived from largely Christian texts, but it doesn't mean that these are Orthodox Christian texts. Many of these are And also, when you look at Islam, it's got influences from all over. It has Jewish, it has Christian, and mostly heretical influences.
Yeah.
It has, and we can tie it to Africa. We can tie it to Yemen, Southern Arabia, which has been completely ignored. I hope to have a chat with Odon Lafontaine soon about that. And also, he's just published his new book. I will be discussing that. I'll do something on that this weekend. Also, I want to bring this up, 9 here. So, for instance, he writes here, this is another Ahmad Didat book, another pile of trash from him. We Muslims believe that Jesus was one of the mightiest messengers of God, that he was the Christ. They'd have no idea what the Christ is.
No clue.
And he was born miraculously without any male intervention, which many modern-day Christians do not believe today. Well, if you're not a Christian if you don't believe that. So, like Paul Williams, he takes the same tack, but also he basically undermines the entire concept of Jesus as God in this particular book, which is Desert Storm. Has it ended? Christ in Islam.
That's, I don't know. That is a weird. Yeah, I wasn't expecting that. Okay.
Yeah, it's just your average Tuesday in Islam. So he undermines the whole concept of Jesus here. And then this one I found really offensive. He says, who moved the stone? And here he puts together the whole resurrection narrative.
Right.
And this is really an offensive book to me. So yeah, he has given away thousands and thousands of copies. As a South African, I'm quite ashamed of the man, because he was South African, from India though. And
this is weird. I saw this as well. Please obtain a Bible in that language for the biblical quotations, and do not try a freehand translation on your own. You're worried that Muslims are going to translate the Bible on their own?
Yeah, no.
I don't know. It just seems weird, but.
So yeah, he speaks here of, now he talks about this. This is very interesting. I'll cover this another time in more detail, but he speaks of Mr. Frank Morrison, a prominent Bible scholar. Now, I dare all of you to run out and go and read about Mr. Frank Morrison, the prominent Bible scholar. I've got some notes elsewhere. I'll cover this another time, but you're going to discover that just maybe, do you think, Chris, there's a tiny, tiny microscopic percentage that Frank Morrison isn't a prominent Bible scholar?
Well, I mean, the fact that he's referred to as Mr. Frank Morrison. So does that mean that he hasn't got a PhD? He's not part of academia? I don't know.
He's a bit of a hack journalist. I mean, so.
Oh, he's a journalist.
I've got a bunch of notes collected on Frank Morrison, which I had a bunch of notes collected on Frank Morrison for discussion at the time. But it's really, I mean, Frank Morrison basically is just he just writes whatever comes into his head, right? And so, who moved the stone? And he says, we are left therefore with the problem of the vacant tomb unsolved. So the guy's like an amateur detective. He's like Laurel and Hardy. You know, instead of the Hardy Boys, he comes across more as Laurel and Hardy. Okay. Joseph of Arimathea secretly removed the body to a more suitable resting place, right? So he goes on and he really works hard at undermining the claims here. So, for instance, he has this really bad, he talks about Masih, okay? So he says, okay, let's do this portion. Why did she go to the tomb? Why did Mary Magdalene go to the tomb? The gospel writers say that she went to anoint him. The Hebrew word for anoint is masaha, which means to rub or to massage or to anoint. The word and its meaning are the same in the Arabic language. From this root word masaha, we get the Arabic word Masih and the Hebrew Messiah, both meaning the same thing. The anointed one, which is translated into Greek as Christos, from which we derive the word Christ. Do Jews massage dead bodies after 3 days? Anoint, it can mean to rub, to massage, to anoint. The anointed one. Do Jews massage dead bodies after 3 days? No. Do Muslims massage dead bodies after 3 days? No. Do Christians massage dead bodies after 3 days? No. It is common knowledge that within 3 hours after death, rigor mortis sets in. The breaking up of the body cells, the hardening of the body. In 3 days, the corpse starts rotting from within. If we massage such a rotting body, it will fall to pieces. She went there to massage him. She gave him a massage. This dead guy needs a massage. Let me do that. Does it make sense that Mary Magdalene wants to massage a rotting body after 3 days? So let me see. You had to rub, to massage, to anoint, and he's like, she went there to massage the guy. That's what you do with dead bodies.
Wow. Wow. You know what? I've heard something really.
By the way, this
really
is
dumb.
interesting. It makes no sense unless we confess that she was looking for a live Jesus to massage him.
So according to him, she's like, hey, you know what? I get the impression I need to give a massage. I need to go right now. That makes no sense. It's bizarre. It's the ponderings of someone who, to be honest with you, you would question their cognitive ability if they told you this. Gosh.
Yeah.
Gosh, it's desperate. You know, it goes against all scholarship. You know, most scholars, no matter how critical they are, will accept that there was a person who was known as Jesus of Nazareth, and who died, who was convicted by Pontius Pilate, judged by Pontius Pilate, and sentenced to death. You know, people, like all scholars, agree with this. Basically, you'd be extremely fringe if you didn't, and you would have to explain why there are references in extra biblical material, Flavius Josephus, in Tacitus. You know, you'd have to explain why that is there, and it's bizarre, really bizarre.
Actually, you know, someone brought up something very interesting here about open. Hold on, folders. Let me do this. Someone brought up something. There's this comment, and according to Islam, the god of Kutam was a demon called the White. Do you know the story about Muhammad's name is supposedly Kutam, right? I don't know if you're familiar with that story.
I haven't done like a deep dive into it, but I've heard of it before.
Let me find something. So Muhammad sacrificed to a white ewe, right? Muhammad sacrificed a white ewe to. Actually, let me go back up. Let me find this. Let me go. I'll have to go to the top again, just so that everyone knows that the idea of whiteness is actually well connected with Muhammad. Right, let me just do that. So there's a few things. The white elephant. So the elephant that supposedly attacked Mecca was a white elephant. Right. So when the elephants came, the year of the elephant is when Muhammad was born, and that elephant was supposedly a white elephant. Just so, by the way, and the name of the elephant was Mahmud. It was a female elephant called Mahmud, which is and Al-Waqidi gives a tradition that there were 13 elephants with the army, besides the famous one called Mahmud. And Mahmud the elephant refused to go into Mecca. So every time Mahmud faced Mecca, Mahmud would lie down. Right. And yes.
Yeah, it's frustration. That's what they're alluding to. Yeah.
Yes. And so we draw attention to a more conclusive instance of Muhammad's association with ancient pagan worship. We are given the words of a confession from his own lips that in his younger days he had sacrificed a white ewe to Al-Uzza, right? By Yaqut al-Hamawi, in the article on Al-Uzza in his geographical dictionary says, the Prophet has made mention of Al-Uzza one day and said, why? I made an offering of a reddish white ewe to Al-Uzza when I was following the religion of my people. Now, the Jews have this thing about the red heifers, right? So you've got a reddish white ewe. But let's continue that. That's in my monotheism series. Now I want to have a look at this. Since this guy brought this up, let me just take away his comment. Al-Abiyad, the Lord of Monday and the moon. Now, the Monday is heavily connected to Islam, right? There's a very heavy connection historically, theologically, to Islam. So Mura al-Abiyad, Jinn king of Monday, and the moon, the white demon. So Mura al-Abiyad, the white one, the father of the light, or the father of light. Aba al-Nur, or Mara, the white king. So Nur, now everyone says Nur is the light of Allah, right? The Nur, right? Except the Nur is not sunlight. Nur specifically means moonlight. There's a different word for sunlight. So the Nur is moonlight, light of the moon. So it's, we're talking about moon worship. And the white king, the Malik al-Abiyad, is Lord of Monday and the moon, Qamar. So it is reported from Atta that Ibn Abbas said a devil called Al-Abiyad came to the Prophet in the form of Jibreel and cast these words, the satanic verses, upon him, and the Prophet recited them. And this guy just mentioned that according to another tradition, he worshipped Al-Abiyad. And Al-Abiyad is said to be closest to Satan in his court. And so you want to conjure him to serve you, okay? Now, this is from a website online where someone says, if you want to summon Al-Abiyad, fast 40 days for the sake of Allah, abstain from all meat products and byproducts. After the obligatory prayer, you must recite the Qasam 100 times, and then recite Surah Al-Jinn 3 times. The incense are this one, so you have to have oud and azuk and so on. And on the last day, recite the conjuration with the incense until he comes with his army. The king Abiyad will assist all your needs after making an agreement with you. This is how to summon in Islamic magic, to summon the demon Abiyad.
Wow.
Yeah, just in reference to. Yeah, and Muhammad received his first revelation on a Monday. I mean, you got to go through the whole list. It's weird how much Monday and the connotations with the moon and such things. The gates of paradise are flung open on Monday and Thursday, but that's the least of it. There's a whole bunch of stuff where there's connections to Mondays. Yeah, and I wanted to also show the audience. So look, this book, by the way, so that just the audience knows, this is the combat kit. Oops, here we go. The combat kit against Bible thumpers, linked in the description box. Right, the combat kit. Then there's this one.
I can't recommend it, unfortunately.
Yeah, just Desert Storm Has It Ended? Christ in Islam, where he talks about Christ in Islam. You might find this. Christian Muslim responses, debate on TV, right? He's talking about South African broadcast television here. The chairman, Mr. Bill Chalmers, I think it can be said that there's at present somewhat more accommodation on the Islamic side for the founder of Christianity than there is on the Christian side for the founder of Islam. What the significance of that is, I'll leave it to you, the viewer, to determine. But I do think you will agree that it is a good thing that we are talking together. Yeah, fine. Yeah, great. Okay, apologists for Islam there. Then I've shown you this one about who moved the stone, where they give you the swoon theory and a whole bunch of other theories by this. And they mention here Dr. Hugh J. Schoenfield, one of the world's leading Bible scholars. Yeah, go look up these names. Go look up what these people believe. Let me bring this up. So for instance, the gospel writers do not say that she went to anoint him. The gospels mention women such as Mary Magdalene going to the tomb to anoint Jesus' body after his crucifixion, but they do not state that the purpose was to anoint him in the sense of anointing him as the Messiah. Right? So the word for anoint is masaha, which means to rub. However, the connection made between this root word and the Arabic word masi is not entirely accurate. The term Messiah in the Hebrew scriptures refers to someone who is anointed, a king or priest, by God. Right? And the Greek word, so they just mentioned some inaccuracies here. And then, so that's not, hold on, let me see if I got anything here. Okay. On this point, the 21st century's greatest enemy of Christian scholarship, Bart Ehrman, has dismissed the Passover plot as a fraud. Now, Ahmed Deedat is here referencing a book called The Passover Plot, okay? So Bart Ehrman has strongly rejected and criticized the Passover plot theory proposed. Hold on, let me do this. So he's saying great biblical scholar Hugh Schoenfield, okay? This guy wrote a bunch of garbage trash. So let me pull this up. Bart Ehrman has strongly rejected and criticized the Passover plot theory proposed by Hugh Schoenfield, which suggests that Jesus faked his own death and resurrection. Here are the key points. He argued that the Passover plot reconstruction of events has almost precisely nothing to do with the historical analysis presented in his book, How Jesus Became God. Ehrman takes great care to distance himself from the Passover plot, calling it offensive to suggest that he, Bart Ehrman, is regurgitating or breathlessly presenting that thesis as a brilliant new discovery. Nowhere in the book does he claim the resurrection was invented by Jesus hallucinating disciples. Now we go back to that the disciples were on drugs.
Yeah,
right?
there's an interesting theory. Point. Yeah? There's from what I've heard, there hasn't been a case that's been documented of two people hallucinating about the same thing at the same time in unison, like separately, basically. So the idea that all of them separately had the same hallucinations, seeing the same things, confirming the same events is Like you won't find that occurring in reality.
Yeah. So basically, Bart Ehrman rejects this because Ahmadiyya is here using Hugh Schoenfeld's Passover plot. Now, the short version is that Jesus said, "Hey guys, you know what I'll do? I'm gonna fake my death. So what we do is, I'm gonna get crucified, right? Then I'm gonna fake my death, and you guys bring me down. You heal me up. 3 days later, I'm gonna appear in public. Everything will be hunky dory. I'll be alive, and everyone's gonna think I'm the Messiah." What Jesus didn't count on was that the Roman soldier would stab him in the side and kill him. That's the Passover plot. So I'm gonna get a crown of thorns put on. I'm gonna get whipped, beaten, carry a cross through the street, get completely just demolished. Then I'm gonna get hung up on the cross for 3 days. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, like crucifixion. Ultimately, you die of suffocation because because I read up about exactly what crucifixion involves. Like when you get pierced through what is most likely your wrists, what happens is in order to sustain breathing, you have to put weight on your own arms and push yourself up. And then when you do that, you can breathe a little bit. And then and it's agony to do that. So you let go, but now you can't breathe right. So you have to push up again. So eventually you'll keep sustaining yourself by pushing on your own arms and wrists, which is painful because there's nails in between them. But eventually you'll give up. And then when you do that, you just suffocate to death. I mean, the people that try and say Jesus survived this, I think, how does that even make sense? It's on the same theory as, Jesus had a secret twin that no one knew, but just like came in right before Jesus.
He lived in Japan and had a kid. Yeah, all of those.
Yeah, this kind of thing. Yeah, it doesn't properly explain the evidence and the data, so it needs to be dismissed. Yeah. The only explanation, I think, is the resurrection. I think that is the strongest case.
Yeah, that's that simple. So the mushroom cult idea is there's a new twist on the mushroom cult being pushed today. There's a guy that's now Dr. Amon something or other. Basically, I don't know, apparently he's a Satanist, whatever, but he's supposedly a scholar. He's now claiming that the word Christ, because the Greek words can have multiple meanings, just like Arabic words can have up to 30 meanings. So the word can also mean like a medication that you rub on your eye. So he's claiming now, this Amon Hillman is now claiming that Christ means, now he makes different claims, but Christ means it is a drug that you place in your eyes and it opens your eyes so you can see the truth. So Christ is actually a drug that the apostles were taking, or something of this nature.
Okay, weird.
Yeah, this is like the new thing that's popular now. But also Schoenfield, the great Christian scholar, right? The great biblical scholar Schoenfield, right? So Ahmadiyya is quoting this great biblical scholar Schoenfield. Schoenfield believes that Jesus was not divine, nor the Son of God, but was used as a crutch, invented by the fledgling church to have a human embodiment of a deity. That's Christian 101. Jesus himself would see his deification as blasphemous. Jesus came to believe he was the expected Messiah of Israel after immersing himself in Old Testament tradition, so he was deluded. He plotted and schemed, so he thought he was the Messiah of Israel, but he thought his deification would be blasphemous, sure. Jesus plotted and schemed to fulfill the messianic prophecies, believing it was imposed upon him through the demands of the Old Testament. He did not believe himself to be divine, despite the New Testament claims. The Gospels are corrupted legends and traditions written after AD 100 by a Gentile offshoot of Jesus' original Jewish followers. The Gospels are inconsistent, late, and have many inaccuracies. The New Testament was written after AD 100, despite evidence to the contrary. His resurrection was not a divine event, but rather a human plot to revive him after his supposed death. Jesus orchestrated his own crucifixion and resurrection with the help of a few assistants, intending to be revived after his death and then assume his rightful place as Messiah. He never intended to actually die on the cross, but planned to be drugged into unconsciousness briefly before being removed from the cross. The Roman soldier's spear pierced his heart, ensuring death before he was removed from the cross. So he didn't die on the cross, but he died on the cross. And Schoenfield's arguments are just a bunch of trash. It's just that's what Ahmadiyya stuff.
It just looks like this typical stuff you'd find on like an atheist forum board on the internet. Like, in all honesty, the whole, the Gospels are super late. It's like, but no scholar believes this. Like, you're going against all scholars. The New Testament wasn't written until 100 AD. Okay, well, some of the book of Galatians could be dated as early as like 50 AD, if not around that time.
Exactly.
It makes. I mean, it doesn't even make. How do you? Oh, okay. There's so much that's wrong with that. My head's going to explode.
Yeah.
Yeah, these things
So
are
this
just
is Dr. Hugh Schoenfeld.
right. Okay, and he's one of the world's leading Bible scholars, right?
Yeah, and that's what Ahmad
Right.
Didat. So,
Sure.
and then the last one I want to bring up is this one because I showed it to you guys, and I was hoping you guys would do an analysis. You and your team would do an analysis of it. But this one is called version 2 in defense of Islam, right? And this is a book that they hope everyone will use, they will use this and use this book for dawah. So it provides you had a brief look at it. Your thoughts on this? I mean, because are the dawah guys all trained and scripted? Because they seem to be heavily scripted.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure most of it comes orally though. Like they hear it rather than they read it. Most of them probably can't read, but honestly, it comes through them hearing what they are told by other supposed experts or sheikhs or imams or da'is, and they just regurgitate it. So it's the same kind of arguments. Uh, yeah, that's basically what it is. They go through like phases and they rehash stuff as well. So it's like a cycle. They start off
Mhm.
with I don't know, the prophets are all sinless, but the Bible says they committed sins. So the Bible can't be true. And then it'll be like, oh, actually, no. What we really mean to say is the prophets did embarrassing things, and that can't be that can't be true. And then people reject. People show that's wrong, and they show that Islam has actually that same issue. And then it'll jump to why was Jesus baptized? If baptism is for the remission of sins, then you'll answer that, Matthew 3:15 to answer that. And then they'll jump to something else. And then finally it'll make its way all the way back to, oh yeah, the prophets are sinless. And and they just go about in the same sort of
It goes
cycle of
back in a circle. Yeah.
because they can't really do much. Innovation is very hard to do. They somewhat try, but remember in Islam, kalam, speculative theology, is hugely discouraged among most groups. So
Hmm.
there's a limit, and they're not really supposed to claim to have more knowledge than the companions of Muhammad did. But the companions of Muhammad weren't great philosophical thinkers. So they didn't address anything. Like they would just stay away from certain topics and say Allah knows best, or what they would say would be incredibly problematic.
Yeah, they were
And
not
because they're bound
systematic
to that,
theologians.
they're
And
not.
yeah,
No, I mean, Allah has body parts. Well, we affirm this, but we can't explain how or why. But we really do think He has body parts. It's
yeah,
okay. Like so, your God has parts. Then your God has composition with real existing physical body parts.
right.
You know.
Yeah. So for the audience, this is in the description box. You can download this, have a look at some of the arguments they use. In some cases, they discuss some of these topics. In others, they link to online websites, they link to YouTube videos as references. So you can see what it is that they use in their defense of Islam, the resources that they send other people to. So this might help you in terms of your understanding, right? Um,
Can you find that? Do you remember in the meeting I found that image and it had like all the supposed writers of the Gospels and New Testament on one side and all of the writers for the Quran on the other. And they were like for the
was it in
Quran,
this
it was
book?
just like tons. I
Was it in
think
this
so.
book?
It's in volume two. If you just like briefly scan through it until you see a big image, it's like a blue image.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, we can bring that up as no blue. There we go. I think my no, not this one.
No, not quite. If I remember right, it like takes up the whole page.
There we go.
There
This
we go.
yes,
Yeah,
yes, this
yeah.
one. Okay. Actually, this is a good point. We can sort of wind down on this one. We can finish up on this one, just so that people have have a few references to Islamic polemics, and then they know what it is they're dealing with. Yeah. So, what are the
This
issues with
is
this?
okay. This is kind of hilarious because it's a bit of a self-own. I don't know why the author who put together this Dawa script has decided to make this, but they're basically trying to say, look, the New Testament, we don't know who wrote this, which is not true at all. And then on the other hand, when they come to who wrote the Quran, he writes a ton of different people, which I think in his mind makes it seem that the Quran is more plausible because it has more authors. But that doesn't do what he wants it to do. That actually just calls into question who wrote the Quran. Because remember, Muslims will, and this happens in the park, but it's kind of funny now because people have kind of popularized a response to this. Muslims will say, who wrote the Gospel of Matthew? And then they'll lead up to who is Matthew and so on and so forth. And you could just say, well, who wrote Surah Al-Baqarah? Who wrote chapter 2 of the Quran? And the issue for them is that they don't have an actual tradition that tells them that. They have a tradition that tells them who compiled the Quran. They have a tradition of people who memorized the Quran, but they don't have a tradition of who specifically wrote it. Because
so, in other words, when it was compiled, Zayd ibn Thabit had to collect all of the various surahs from different scribes and different memorizers and then have them written down. So someone had to write down the original copy. Someone had to write down. And so each surah or each chapter of the Quran was written by somebody.
Exactly. But we don't know who. So you see how that massively backfires for them. And this is kind of admitting that. Go on, Lloyd.
No, go on. You finish first.
I was just going to say, so what they're doing here, sort of low key, is for the Quran, here are all the possible people who could have contributed to it in some way. That's what they're saying. Well, they're literally saying here are all the different authors. Wow, at least they give a source, I guess.
History of the Quranic text.
Yeah. It's not like, we can trace it down to, I don't know, 4 people or something. It's no. It's a huge list of possible people who may have contributed in some way to the Quran. We don't know exactly what
bits. But the Quran is supposed to be a single text, whereas the Bible is many, many books.
Yeah, exactly that.
Written over centuries.
I don't know why they wrote the New Testament. That's kind of weird. If you're contrasting it with the Quran, surely you'd write Bible. But for some reason, he's just picked the New Testament, which is also weird because...
So who is this guy and what did he write? Who is Amr bin Fuhaira? Who is Talha? Who is he and what did he write? Mundir, Mughira, Mu'aqib. Who is he and what did he write? Exactly. He wrote the Quran?
He wrote maybe some part of it, but we don't know which part. Maybe for all we know, let's have a look at a guy. Let's pick... Ubay ibn Ka'b is there. So Ubay ibn Ka'b could have wrote 90% of the Quran and all the other guys just contributed to that last 10%. For all we know, maybe Zayd bin Thabit, who was a scribe of Muhammad, maybe he wrote 90% of it. We have no idea.
Here. Zayd ibn Thabit, do you see his name? I don't see his name.
Yeah, there is. Zayd, it's in the middle on the second row, second column. Zayd bin Thabit, they call him here. Sometimes it's Zayd bin Thabit, sometimes it's Zayd
bin
Thabit.
Okay, there you go. You're right.
So he is there. At least I got that right. At least he's involved in the compilation of it. And supposedly he wrote some of it down. But how much and where? We don't know.
Are there any supporting historical writings or archaeology? No. The oldest Islamic manuscripts are late. And those that are the oldest ones are very, very different. They will claim otherwise. I read a paper recently, a week ago, I read a paper on comparing the Birmingham and the Sunnah, and the guy claims they are 98.917% identical, or some random story of that type. You tell me. But then, of course, the Sunnah is 2 manuscripts. It's the palimpsest, so it's got the underlayer and the overlayer. So yeah, you look at that, and that's, there's some differences.
Just to add real quick as well. Yep. Sorry to jump in. In the palimpsest of the Sunnah manuscript, Surah 9, Ayah 85 is missing. It's just not there.
Yeah. And notice, true, and they will claim, though, that refuting, they will claim here there are no missing or added verses in the Quran. So you've just made that point. They have their own refutations here. So subchapter 1, right, section 3, subchapter 1, page 42. So for those of you who do polemics online, I want you to think about your arguments and see if they have a refutation in this text, for instance. This one in version 2, Defense of Islam, link in the description. So you can have a look at that and see how they deal with that. You can look at the resources that they use. And this may have been updated since then, who knows? But this is one that is common that they give out to other Muslims. So understand these guys are organized, they're trained, they all sing off the same hymn sheet. And we don't really do that. So, yeah, and then Philip, just to answer that question. So when the 1924 Quran was canonized, it took 17 years, and the scholars at Al-Azhar utilized a theological tradition. They took the historical tradition, but they did not use any ancient texts at all, and they didn't have any Uthmani Quran to compare to. They simply picked one of the Qira'at. They didn't even go to one of the main readers. They went to a student of one of the main readers, and that particular student, this being Hafs, he's got multiple contested variants of his own variant of the Quran. So they claim that he was an authentic. So he was a student of one of the main readers, and he wrote it down authentically and accurately. But we know there's at least 4 different variants of his own version. Now, don't forget, Hafs, for every reader, you have 2 students. So for everyone who was an authentic reader of the Quran or canonized version of the Quran, there are 2 students who have received that transmission and have recorded that transmission. So Hafs doesn't agree with the other student, and Hafs doesn't even agree with himself. Would that be fairly accurate, Chris?
Yeah, completely. I'm still baffled by how that's even possible.
Yeah.
But somehow it is.
Yeah. So yeah, I should probably call it a night here. I just wanted to sort of introduce some of the sources, discuss some of the arguments, the polemics, and and just show people through these books where these ideas and arguments came from, and where just the bad sources and the people that they appeal to. I mean, they appeal to some of the worst possible sources, the most ridiculously stupid sources, and they pump them up and claim that they're scholars when they're not. They claim that they are, great. I mean, this guy's heretical. Bluntly, Schoenfield is just absolutely heretical. He's as bad as Dan Brown, if not worse. So, that's what we're dealing with as authentic biblical scholarship now, apparently.
As defined by Islam. No.
Yeah, it's defined by Islam and Muslims. Yeah, so guys, I should call it a night here. Any final words from you, Chris? Any thoughts from you?
No, it's been really good. I'm not too surprised by a lot of the stuff in the Ahmed DDAT instruction manuals. The Desert Storm thing still makes me laugh. Yeah, it's the same kind of stuff we hear at the Speaker's Corner, but in different forms. It's all the same kind of nonsense that they come up with, but it's easy to refute. So,
are we effective? I mean, are we pushing back hard? Are we starting to undermine their faith in their stories? Are we starting to make them desperate?
Yes. Well, I mean, we'll put it this way: there's now an embargo, an unspoken embargo on pretty much all Christians who are frequent goers to Speaker's Corner. David, who's, like, as an example, is a very talented speaker at Speaker's Corner, a very talented debater. He knows a lot about Islam, and we've been going through some stuff in the weekly apologetics meetings, and he is completely blacklisted. He now has to constantly approach Muslim debaters. I mean, debaters in the loosest sense, because they don't debate anymore, and say, "Hey, I want to challenge you on the Quran. I want you to defend your Quran." And they'll say, "Look, we'll defend Christianity as well. We'll be fair, but I want you to defend your Quran." And they go, "Nope, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to run away." And that's the state of play. It's a real shame. Speaker's Corner is a place of debate, but the Muslims there, who still make up the majority, or that is slowly changing, I think, they can't debate.
So they're retreating.
Yes,
because we've learned all their tricks.
You'll notice. Well, some of them actually go at the outside of the park and they wait there and they give evangelism there to random people who walk by. Basically, there's like an entrance, and Muslims often stay there and they talk to unexpected visitors and try to convert them there. But the actual inside the park, there are still a few, but they basically go in their own little corner and they don't want people to go outside that corner.
Yeah, I mean, they tackle people with no knowledge. They tackle newbies. It's obvious. I mean, yeah, I mean, they're not desperate to talk with me about the Sharia, for instance.
Yeah,
it does make
what will happen.
So look, guys, learn your enemy's playbook. Study his playbook. I've shown you the links are in the description. I've shown you where they get some of these arguments from. Download those. Have a look through those. Look at your polemics and look at their refutations. Study their refutations and learn how to pick them apart. Learn how to counter their counters. I think that would be important. Would you agree with that, Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good point. Really good point to do exactly that.
Yeah. So, guys, thank you very much. That's it from me tonight. I appreciate the time that you've been on, Chris. We had over 110 people at one point, so that's really great.
Yeah, likewise. Yes. It's always a pleasure to be here and have a chat.
Yeah, no, thank you. I really appreciate this. Hopefully, the audience has good material to go away with, to do some of their own analysis, improve their apologetics, improve their polemics. And we've got some new arguments. Talk about Allah is just like his creation. Allah is one single thing. God is not. Isn't God unlike anything in creation? Think questions. We got to ask the hard questions and put them on the back foot. They've got nothing to stand on. I mean, really, I think these people have. Islam is just the biggest, most amazingly successful con job in history.
Yes, yeah, and it's real that it affects people's salvation. It really, and that's a sad thing about it. There are so many people who are trapped inside Islam. They can't leave because then they feel like they're abandoning their family, they're abandoning their history, and also there's a real threat of them being killed because of it in many places of the world. So
they do.
That's
yeah, but that's changing now. The ex-Muslim movement shows that this is slowly changing. Things are changing.
Absolutely, yeah.
So all of the arguments, we are taking them apart, speak to people, tell people. I have people contact me on a regular basis that my arguments are getting through to their wives, to their son, to their daughter, to their priest. They're talking about these things. They're actually approaching their priest and saying, hold on, that was wrong about Islam. And can we sit down and have a talk about this? And they've got evidence to show him because they were well prepared by going through my arguments, my notes, and showing them evidence, showing the priest authoritative sources. And they say, look, people tell me things are changing, things are improving, that they're starting to be effective in their communities, in their circles. So guys, you can do it too. All of us have our part to play.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So guys, thank you. Yeah. So guys, we could be a whole night, so I need to end it here, but thank you very much, Chris, for the time. It's been a pleasure, been a real privilege. And I'm sure we'll chat again soon. You said you were very busy, so thank you for taking the time out. So guys, have a great day, wherever you are in the world, and God bless. See you soon.
Take care. God bless.
Good night.